Welcome, John. Thank you for joining us on Som-TV for today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you. So to begin, I'd like you to introduce yourself and please tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, my name is John Urquhart. I've lived in King County my whole life. I've been married for 37 years. I have 2 daughters. I went to the University of Washington and I graduated from the School of Business. After I graduated from the U, I started a business and I ran a business. I had about 4 locations and 50 or 60 employees. I did that for about 10 or 12 years. Then I sold that business. Then we had our 2 daughters, although one is adopted. She's from Korea. So we have our 2 daughters. And then I went to work for the King County Sheriff's Office as a police officer full-time.
Wonderful. And how long were you a police officer? How long did you
Well, actually, both full-time and part-time.
Yeah.
I've been a police officer for 36 years. Wow. The last 24 years, full-time with the Sheriff's Office. And then I retired in January of this year.
Okay. And I understand that you worked with both David Urquhart and the recent sheriff.
That's exactly right. I've had kind of a varied career in the Sheriff's Office. I started out as a patrol officer. I was a master police officer. I was a field training officer, training new police officers. I was an undercover narcotics detective, an undercover vice detective. I was a sergeant. I've investigated everything from shoplifts to homicides. But about 10 years ago, I went downtown to work directly for Dave Urquhart, who was the sheriff at the time. I became his senior policy advisor. And then when he went to Congress, I worked for Sue Rahr, and she was the sheriff until just this year. Yeah. And I was a policy advisor for her as well. So I've been downtown in the King County Courthouse for about the last 10 years.
Wonderful. And how do you think that experience has influenced your decision to run as a sheriff?
Well, it gave me an insider's view of the Sheriff's Office. Now I understand how the Sheriff's Office runs. I worked with the County Council on budget issues, on policy issues. I worked with the King County Executive on budget issues and policy issues. I've been right in the heart of the Sheriff's Office for a long time. So it's kind of a natural progression for me to run for sheriff.
Oh, great. And while most people are familiar with the term sheriff, a lot of us don't really know what it means. Could you please explain to us what the term really entails, like the duties and the role of a sheriff, as well as the difference between the police department and the sheriff's department?
Actually, nowadays, there is no difference between the police and the sheriff's office. Historically, sheriff's offices have been the only police agency outside of cities, and a police department were inside a city. Now that's changed a lot, so that we police both in areas outside of cities, out in very rural areas and suburban areas, unincorporated areas that aren't cities, but we also patrol inside cities, inside very urban cities. Specifically, we have 12 cities that contract with us for police services. In other words, rather than forming their own police department, such as the Seattle Police, for example, they've decided we can do a better job and a less expensive job if we just hire the Sheriff's Office to be our police department. So cities like Burien and SeaTac and Shoreline and Woodinville and North Bend, for example, are all contracts with us. They may say Burien, for example, or SeaTac on their uniform, but their badge says King County Sheriff's Office, and all the employees come from the King County Sheriff's Office. In addition, we're the police department for the Muckleshoot Indian Reservation. They hire us. And we are the police department for Metro Transit and Sound Transit. So we police the bus shelter in downtown Seattle, for example, the bus shelters all across King County, the bus shelters, all of the bus routes. And we are the police department for Sound Transit, both light rail and heavy rail. So really the Sheriff's Office is everywhere in King County. If you pick up your telephone and dial 911, there's a good chance a uniformed King County Sheriff's Office will respond. In fact, we have 500,000 people in King County where we are the primary police agency that will respond.
Wow, thank you. What do you think is the most pressing law enforcement issue is in King County right now? What would you say?
I think the one that affects an awful lot of people right now is gun violence. The city of Seattle, for example, has had 23 gun homicides in 2012, and it's only September. There will be more. Out in our jurisdiction, we've had a number as well. And we have to figure out a way to reduce that homicide rate. And that's probably the most pressing, immediate issue. There's other issues as well that affect more people, such burglaries and car prowls and that sort of thing. The main job of any police department is to answer 911 calls, to reduce crime and reduce the fear of crime. Even if you haven't been a victim of a crime, but you are afraid you're going to be a victim because your neighborhood isn't safe, or you think your neighborhood isn't safe, then we're not doing a good enough job and we have to do more.
That is so true. Thank you. Given our budget restraints and just the economy in our times right now, what are some of the ways you would stretch the tax dollar payers in terms of crime prevention?
We don't have enough money in King County to properly fund the sheriff's office. So we have to look very, very closely at what we do fund. And we need to look to other cities, other police agencies, and see what services could be combined so that we can form a partnership with some cities. You know, how many SWAT teams do we need in King County?
Yeah.
Perhaps there's ways that we can join with another agency and reduce those costs. We have to reduce our overtime costs as best we can. There's always going to be overtime in a police agency.
Yeah.
Just the way it works. But if we look at that, and really what it takes somebody that has, I think, a business background that can bring their experience as a business person in the private sector into government and really look for ways to save money. And that's what I want to do.
Wonderful. And as you already know, majority of our audience are Somali Americans, and a lot of the Somali community is facing cultural and language barriers that prevent understanding of the law or prevent involvement within the law enforcement, or in ways like reporting a crime or being able to speak to police officers or be comfortable enough to speak to police officers, and even just knowing about the crime statistics in their counties or in their cities. How would your office try to sort of bridge that gap?
Well, I think there's two ways to do that. One of those is to have more languages available on our website. Yes. We really need to do that, and we have a way where citizens can report crimes on the website. When there's no suspect around, when it's safe, certain crimes can be reported on the website, but if you're not comfortable with English, if you want your own language, we need to make sure that that's available, and that's one of the things I want to do. But the other bigger issue, I think, is how we, the police, interact with communities of color. And just like anything else, if you're not used to doing that, a lot of people will be fearful. And some of it's cultural, some of it's language driven, but it's our responsibility to get out into those communities and interact. Not when it's an emergency, not just when it's an emergency, not just when somebody has called 911 because they want the police there, but all those other times when we can go out and talk to people and get out of our patrol car. It's absolutely critical that my deputies get out of their patrol car and talk to people. And that's not just in communities of color, that's everywhere. But it's most important in communities of color because of the language barrier, and at times because of the cultural barrier between citizens and the police.
Definitely. Thank you. What do you think, what role do you think social media plays in the sheriff's office, if any?
Well, I think it's a huge role. Not with people my age necessarily, but certainly with young people. And we need to take advantage of that tool, that means of communicating with younger people. And social media is huge. I don't care what your language is. I don't care where you're from. If you're of a certain age, I believe social media plays a huge role in your life. And that's one of the ways we can break down the barriers between the police and the community, any community.
And do you think there is a need for more community media, whether it's radio or newspapers, and how would you make use of that local, I mean, you said that a little bit, but how would you make use of the local media?
We have to be there.
Yeah.
We have to be there. This is a prime example.
Exactly.
You know, when was the last time you had a sheriff on Somali TV?
First time.
First time, that's
Yes.
exactly right. But I promise you, it's not going to be the last time. And it's not just Somali TV. There's Latino TV and Latino newspapers and Asian newspapers and Asian TV. There's all of those opportunities for the sheriff to interact with these communities. I can do it by walking around, which is good. My deputies, the people that work for me, can do it by walking around, but we can reach a much bigger audience by using the media, and TV is a prime example.
Yes.
And I am going to do that, I promise you.
Definitely, we will hold you to that.
You hold me to that.
True. And what do you think is one of the issues facing, like, inside the sheriff's office? What changes would you bring to the sheriff's office that you've? So what are some of the things you would like to change?
We have a very big issue right now with use of force by deputies, and more importantly, how we as the management responds to use of force. We have policies in place to deal with force, but we have not been following those policies. That's not the fault of the line officer, the person that's driving around in the patrol car. That's management's fault. And that's the main thing that I want to fix. There is a culture in the sheriff's office that doesn't take discipline seriously. And I want to take discipline seriously. I want to take use of force issues seriously, so we can reassure the community, especially communities of color, so we can assure the community that we are going to investigate deputies thoroughly. They have to have that assurance. And unless we follow certain policies and our own policies and new policies that I want to institute, then the communities will not be confident. If they're not confident in what we do after the fact, they're not going to call us when we need them to. Yes.
Talk a little bit about the DOJ's investigation into the Seattle Police Department. What are your thoughts on their decision, their agreement to change procedures and to sort of fix the problems?
First, you have to look at why the Department of Justice, DOJ, is coming into the Seattle Police Department, is investigating the Seattle Police Department and mandating, telling them what they have to do. And the reason is because 34 community organizations, plus the ACLU, plus community leaders like John McKay and Mike McKay, went to the Department of Justice and said, hey, there's something wrong in the Seattle Police Department. We don't trust them to police themselves. And so the Department of Justice came in, and now they are mandating what the Seattle Police Department is going to do. And it doesn't matter what I think about whether that's good or that's bad. What matters is what the community thinks. They lost the confidence in the leadership of the Seattle Police Department. Rightly or wrongly, that's what happened. And that's what I'm trying to prevent in the King County Sheriff's Office. And I've been told that the Department of Justice is close to doing the same thing with the Sheriff's Office. They are watching the Sheriff's Office very closely. They won't do anything before the election because they don't want to unduly affect the election. But when the Department of Justice comes into your police organization, it's a black eye on the organization. It's a morale killer within the people that work there, and it can be very, very expensive. If it can be avoided by reassuring the community that we are doing the right things, that's what we need to do. And that's what I plan to do, so the Department of Justice doesn't come into the Sheriff's Office like they have with the Seattle Police Department.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Could you tell me a little bit about, like, the ranks and the different parts of the department?
At the street level, we have deputies and detectives. Deputies are in uniform. Detectives are not in uniform, but they do the follow-up investigations after a case has been taken. And there are about 600 deputies and detectives. And then the first level supervisors are sergeants. They have 3 stripes on their sleeve. And above them are captains. There's about 102 sergeants. There's 21 captains. There's 5 majors, 2 chiefs, an undersheriff, and then hopefully after November there will be me, the sheriff. But the entire sheriff's office is about 660 people, 660 police officers, about almost 400 civilians that help us out. So that's almost 1,100 employees. The budget is $160 million. This is a big organization. We are the second largest local police agency in the state of Washington, and we're about the 12th or 13th largest sheriff's office in the country. We are a very big organization.
Wow, thank you. And when you say detectives, does that work with the FBI detectives, or are they separate, different from?
Well, they're different, but
Okay.
but we will work together. The FBI only investigates federal crimes.
Yeah.
But if a bank is robbed, that's not only a federal crime, it's a state crime as well. So oftentimes on a bank robbery especially, we will work very closely with the FBI on the investigation of that bank robbery, for example.
Okay, thank you. And to you, how important is it to work with the different King County agencies, law enforcement agencies? And what plans do you have to create good relations in the future to work with all of the King County law enforcement agencies?
It's absolutely critical that we work with other police agencies. Where we stop policing and Seattle starts, we know where that is, but a criminal doesn't. And he will go from our jurisdiction to Seattle, to Bellevue perhaps, or to Kent, and they don't pay any attention to that. So for us, all of us, to be effective in fighting crime and arresting suspects, we have to work very closely together. And I think we do. I want to make sure that that continues. Good crime fighting, and remember, crime and the fear of crime is our #1 priority.
Yes.
We have to work with these other police agencies.
Thank you. What does the word transparency mean to the sheriff's office, or to you as a sheriff, future sheriff?
Two things. Transparency means telling the truth always to the public, to our own people, but primarily to the public. But transparency also means not shading the truth, not telling part of the truth, not spinning the truth to your own advantage. It's absolutely critical that my organization and me in particular tells it like it is, and we let the chips fall where they may, because I'm not always going to have good news about things that happen inside the sheriff's office. Sometimes bad things happen with 1,000 employees. Sometimes employees make mistakes, or I will make a mistake, and I can't cover that up. I can't shade that so it's beneficial to me or the organization. We're the government. We exist because of tax dollars, and it's absolutely critical that we tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, all the time. That's what transparency is.
Definitely. Okay. So as we were talking about, we want people to vote. We want people to come out and not just focus on the presidential elections, but also focus on local elections. So what would you say to the people? Can you just tell them, what message do you want to convey to them to come out and vote?
Well, the first message is you're an American citizen now. We want you to vote. You have that right in this country, and you need to exercise that right. And I would tell that to anybody, not just the Somali community. I tell that to my daughters. You have to vote. That's absolutely critical. Then I would tell them to vote for me. Clearly, I think I'm the best person to be the next sheriff. Otherwise, I wouldn't be running.
Yeah.
So I would hope that they'd look at the issues, they'd listen to what I have to say, and then they would vote for me.
Thank you. And for everyone at home, here's the flyer and here's the website. The website is johnforsheriff.com. So as we've been saying, please vote. Go out and vote. Don't just think of elections as presidential elections, but vote for local candidates as well and focus on the local politics. This is what affects you most directly. And what we want to convey to our audience right now is that it's extremely important for you to go out on November and make sure that you vote for the candidate of your preference, and especially for people who you think are going to make a difference in your community and make a difference in your life personally. Also, we'd like for the individuals, like the younger people who've just become 18 or who are newly citizen, to make sure that you're participating and you're exercising your right as a United States citizen. Also, encourage your parents who may not see the importance of voting. And as Somalis, we know that it sometimes seems ridiculous to parents. It doesn't, like they don't feel like their vote makes a difference as an individual. But truly it does, and we want you to understand that. We want them to know that any vote, all votes count. And if you don't, then you're just taken away from a policy or a person that you would like to endorse. And also visit John Urquhart for Sheriff on Facebook, please, as well as johnforsheriff.com. Thank you.
And when you get to Facebook, please like the page. I would love that. Thank you very much.
Say anything else you'd like to conclude with.
Okay, thank you. The only way a police department can be successful is if we are a mirror of the community. The people that are police officers have to look exactly the same as the people in the community. It's absolutely critical that we go out and we recruit from communities of color, whether it's Asian or Somali or whatever it is. So if you think you might like being a police officer, please let us know. We would love to have you apply, and we'd love to have you on our sheriff's office. Right now we have one deputy who is Somali American, and we'd sure like to have more. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here with us. We're really glad to have you. Thank you for coming on Som-TV.
Mahat Senate, vote for me.
We'll let everybody know. Thank you very much.